or they may be selected by the school itself. A large majority of students, though, are selected for verification by the department. So typically students are notified of this after they file their Fafsa, but the schools will also follow up and let you know that there are some verification processes you need to complete before your aid can be finalized. Now, oftentimes students will ask and they'll say, hey, I got selected for verification. Did I do something wrong? And do not assume any of that. Don't be worried about verification. You're not accused of doing anything wrong. Around 30% of students across the country are selected for verification each year. So it's a really common process. That's almost, you know, one in three students across the board. And a large majority of students are selected randomly. So it's almost an audit in a way of the Department of Education's aid programs. But you may be asked to provide information pertaining to your household size, including family members in the household, 2018 tax data, but we'll get into that in just a little bit here. There are some reasons why a student selection may be more than random. And here are just a few examples of common ways that students can be selected. The first one that we see is if a family reports that their income and the taxes paid on the Fafsa are the same or close to the same. So for example, you indicate that your income was around $75,000, perhaps your adjusted gross income, but you also paid $75,000 in taxes to the federal government. That's pretty unlikely. So your Fafsa could be flagged for verification. Perhaps the number of family members listed in your household is unusually high, or perhaps the number of individuals who are listed as enrolled in college is very high in your family. Another reason we see or speculate that students may be selected for verification is that their income is significantly different from what was reported on a prior year Fafsa. Or perhaps you reported a pretty high amount of interest income, but kind of a lower or no assets reported that could correspond with a high interest income. So those are a few examples. Sometimes students are selected just once. Sometimes they are selected every single year that they're in college. There's really no way to predict, unfortunately. If you were tuning in today and you are not selected, please stay tuned, because it could be a possibility that you may have to go through this process at some point during your collegiate career. So with the verification process, you will be asked to submit an electronically signed verification form through our online portal. We do have a very specific portal that we use, pacific.verifymyfafsa.com. Students can also access this link through Inside Pacific, or they can go directly to that URL. But if you are selected for verification, you will get an automated email from our office inviting the student to go through and create their account. So please do not go through and create an account or attempt to if you have not gotten that invitation. You can always check with our office just to see if you have been selected, if maybe you might have missed the email or thought you missed an email there. But no need to go through and submit anything if we're not asking for it. On the Fafsa, if you didn't use the IRS data retrieval tool to link all of your tax information over, you may be prompted to go through and upload tax documents, perhaps a 2018 tax return transcript. Throughout the process, there may be other documents that are asked of you to submit, perhaps W-2s, bank statements, investment information, really specific things perhaps as it pertains to your individual financial situation and what was reported on the Fafsa, but this may not be the case for everyone. Everyone's case is individual. So with that being said, here are some screenshots of what the verification process looks like for both the student and then also the parent if the student is considered dependent. One quick reminder as we kind of go through all of this, if any questions come up as we're talking through information, please go ahead and add those in the Q&A section. So that way we can kind of keep everything in one place. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started taking a look at some of these screenshots. I apologize for the quality of some of them. I tried to get the best images that I could, but sometimes, you know, with computers, it's blowing things up, trying to make it bigger for everyone to see. It didn't always come through the way I wanted it to, but hopefully you'll get kind of a general idea of what the portal looks like. So to start, this is the login prompt that students will get at the pacific.verifymyfafsa website. They can log in if they have created their account. If not, they should be prompted to go through and create their account. One thing to note on creating the account, the student does need to put all of their identifying information as it is listed on the Fafsa. So if you go by a nickname, don't use your nickname. Use your legal name as it is listed on your social security card. Everything is all linked by what data is listed on the Fafsa. So that is one important thing to note. But once the student creates their account, they will be presented with a portal that looks a little bit like this. It'll state dependent or perhaps independent verification form, depending on the status of the student. And as they go through the form, they'll see little red circles on the left-hand side there. As those circles are completed, they will turn green and there will be a little check mark on the side of them. So that's kind of a way that you can monitor all of these steps. And one thing to note with this portal, it has some smart logic built into it. So it will prompt you to upload documents based on the way that questions are answered when you start to fill out the verification form. So I'll show you what that looks like. So the student would go ahead and they'd hit that fill out button. And then from there, all of their demographic information here should auto-populate. So their first and last name and their phone number on file. You can always correct it if you need to, if that looks wrong. But then the student would hit that orange continue button. And then next, it is going to ask for information in the household. Who is living in the household? Who is being supported? So let me kind of break that down for you. The student's information will automatically be listed here. And this part of the form is actually where we see most of the mistakes that students complete, because it's not just asking for the student and one parent, it is asking for every single person who lives in the household. So let's say, for example, you are a family of 4, perhaps 2 parents, the student, and then a sibling. All 4 of those people, if they are living in the household, they will need to be listed on this form. The parents that the student resides with, let's say, for example, oftentimes there are cases where parents are either divorced or separated. Let's say the student lives with biological mom. If biological mom has gotten remarried, so there's a step parent involved in this situation, the step parent needs to also go on the household size form, because those are the people that live in the household if the student resides with them. You also can list other people. So let's say, for example, your family, maybe you support another relative, maybe an aunt, an uncle, or a grandparent, perhaps a cousin. You know, oftentimes we have family situations like that. If you are providing, or if the family is providing at least 50% of the financial support for any siblings, any other family members, they can be listed on this form. You also will be reporting if there are any other siblings in the household that are going to college. So if you've got other siblings, old or younger, that are attending college at the same time you are, you can include that information on this form as well. And to go through and add all of these various people, you would hit that orange Add Person button at the bottom. It will prompt you to go through and indicate who they are, their date of birth, their relationship to the student. And it will kind of add them all to that form, and I'll show you what that would look like a little bit later on. But after you go through and add all of the members in the household, from there, it is going to prompt the student to list information about their tax situation. So if the student filed taxes in 2018. So the FAFSA is always going to ask you for your tax situation from 2 years prior. So sometimes students have part-time jobs, perhaps when they're in high school. Maybe they did file a tax return in 2018. So in that case, the student would indicate they have already filed. A couple of the other options, maybe they did earn income, but perhaps they did not earn enough to be required to file. So they would select that third option. I earned income, but I was not required to file taxes. Later on, that form may ask them to upload that W-2, for example, just to show how much they earned. Or, which is the case for many students, the very last option, I was not required to file taxes because I did not earn any income from work in 2018. So the student is going to click whatever pertains to their specific tax situation, and they will hit continue. And then from there, it opens up the option to list information about parent taxes. Now keep in mind, these examples are for a dependent student. If you are independent by age, for example, or if you're married, you're a military veteran, etc., it's not going to ask for any kind of parent tax information. But our biggest population are typically dependent students, so that's kind of the example I'm going with today. But this portal does look very similar for independent students as well. So here, as you can see, there are quite a few more options for parents and their tax situation. Sometimes students say, hey, I don't see that option for my parent. I don't see anything that applies to them. We always have to tell them, hey, make sure you scroll all the way down because there are quite a few more options than what is just initially listed on the form. So if parents are married and they filed a joint tax return, you can indicate that. Perhaps parents are married or even unmarried and living together and they filed a separate tax return. All of the various marital statuses and tax filing combinations should be listed here. And if you as the student, if you have any questions about what you need to indicate here, we can always kind of reference your FAFSA to see what is going on there. And certainly, follow up with your parent if you're not quite sure, what their tax status is, and they can assist you with that further. So from there, all of the information that you list through those questions, it is then going to populate onto this electronic form. I can kind of show you a little bit more. Obviously, I've blurred out like the student's information, but you can see here under the dependent student tax filer status, this student indicated that they didn't have to file because they didn't have any income from work in 2018. And then the parent indicated perhaps that they are not married and they filed their 2018 tax return and they're going to upload it. And maybe that was the choice they selected because perhaps they didn't use the data retrieval tool initially on the FAFSA. From here, as you can see, all the way toward the bottom, there is an e-sign PIN. The system should prompt a student to set up the PIN when they create their account. But if for some reason the student's forgotten the PIN number, it's 5 digits, they can always hit that forgot e-sign PIN and it will help them reset it. But the student would go through and they would type in that PIN number and that will electronically sign the form for them on their behalf. Sometimes students and families have trouble with the e-sign process. I'll go into what that looks like for the parent here in a moment. But one disclaimer that I want to say here is that we either need to have 2 electronic signatures, one by the student and the parent, or we need to have 2 wet physical signatures. It cannot be, unfortunately, 1 electronic and then 1 physical. Has to be one or the other. So you do always have the option of opting out of the e-sign process. That little grayed out box there, you can toggle that on. It'll turn orange to indicate, yes, you want to opt out of the e-sign process. And then the form will actually allow you to download it, print it, sign it, and you can scan and upload it back. Occasionally families have trouble with getting the e-signature processed and updated, so that is another way that you can elect to sign the form. This is just a screenshot of that forgot e-sign PIN. The student goes through and verifies all of their information there, and then they can go through and reset their PIN number. And then it should send them back to go through and sign the form at the bottom with that PIN. The student will get a notification that their e-signature has been successful, and based on the information provided, it will tell them, hey, you've got to upload these documents. So in this case, the student needs to upload their parents' 2018 1040 tax return. They click OK, and it should take them back to that home dashboard. So now on this dashboard, you can see that it's been updated quite a bit based on the information provided. So there's 2 more of those little red circles there. The first one right in the middle, it states that the student has e-signed the form, but now a parent signature is also required. So the student can hit that request button, the little pencil to the right-hand side of that notice, and then it will prompt them to add their parent email information. So the parent will then get a request to go through and review and sign this form. At the same time, it's also asking the student to go through and upload the 2018 1040. Keep in mind that if family did not use a certain tax preparer, like an accounting firm or another agency, separate from like TurboTax, if you use some sort of online software yourself, you do need to make sure you physically sign your tax return. So one note there before I forget that, because that's another common thing we see. Tax returns are uploaded because many families do prepare their taxes themselves, but it's not signed at the bottom of the page there. So keep that in mind. The parent signature and the upload button, the tax paperwork, those can be done at any point. No specific order in which the signature needs to be submitted or the document needs to be uploaded. You can do both of them at the same time or one after the other. It doesn't matter either way. Here is the request for the parent e-signature. And very often the parent 1 and parent 2, that information may already be pre-populated from the Fafsa. So the student can select which parent they would like to send the signature form to. If there are 2 parents in the household, only 1 parent has to sign. We do not need 2 parents to sign off on this process. Just like with the Fafsa, only 1 parent needs to officially sign it at the end. So the student would go through and put in the parent email address, and then they're going to want to send that request to the parent. So from here, it will then tell the student that you have sent that request. The student at any time can cancel the request, or they can edit it and send it to a different parent perhaps. One thing to note here, if at any point a student makes a mistake on the form or they need to update something, if the signature request has already been sent out to the parent, and if the student has already used their PIN number to e-sign, you have to cancel all of those requests and signatures before the form will allow you to go through and edit it. So just one thing to keep in mind, if you do need to edit that form at any point before submitting it and you've sent out those signature requests, you kind of have to backtrack and you have to go through and cancel them. Then the form will allow you to make updates. So from here, this is a screenshot of the notice that a parent gets to their personal email. It says here, dear parent of Riley, Riley has updated the 2021 verification form and they are now requesting your signature. There is a link to go through and create your account. If you already have an account, maybe you have perhaps another student at Pacific, or if you are going through this process as a continuing student, you can go through and just immediately log in. But for a majority of our families, they may not have started this process yet. The parent will need to create that account first. So from there, here are a handful of screenshots of that parent account creation process. We'll kind of go from left to right. On this side there, you can see just all of the parents' information they have to confirm. Once again, please try to match this as closely as you can to all of the parent information that is on the Fafsa, because it does all have to link. But then once you go through and you type in all of the information on the form on the left-hand side, you will get a notice that your account has been created successfully. From there, it should redirect you to the login page. At that same time though, it is going to send you another email confirming that you have created your account. And then you do also need to click the link to verify your email address. This part is actually pretty critical in the process because right after you create your account, you will get that verify email address link. That email and that link does expire after 20 minutes. Unfortunately, with the software that we use, we don't have a lot of control over that 20-minute time frame. We can always resend you that verification email. This part is important because if you, as the parent, if you need to change your password or update your information, if you have not verified your email address, then you've got to get us on the phone. We've got to resend that link to you. So if you're able to do it right away after you create your account, that is really helpful for everyone. So hit that link to verify, and then it should prompt you to also go through and log in. Once you've verified your email, you'll also get that little green checkbox that your email was successfully verified, and then you can continue onto the site. So one thing just to keep an eye on in your email inbox, that verification email is forthcoming after you create your account. All right, from there, the parent will need to go through and indicate they want to preview the verification form. It should have a very similar look to what the student sees. In fact, you'll probably see that the student may have already electronically signed it. And then at the bottom, it will ask you for your e-sign password. To my knowledge, you should be able to use the same password that you use to create the parent account. I do not believe it asks for that 5-digit PIN number to be created. You use the password for the account. I believe that is correct on the parent end. Once you type in the password, you should be able to indicate that you would like to e-sign it after verifying all of the information your student has put in. If you do notice anything that is not correct from what your student indicated, this would be a situation where your student would need to go through and cancel the signature request and then cancel their own e-signature so it can be edited. Then they will need to resend that signature request to you. All right, from there, the student has e-signed, the parent has e-signed, and then we can see we've got another little green check mark there. Congratulations, the form has been e-signed. But we still have one more objective. In this case, the student has to upload the tax return from there. So they would hit upload. And then from there, you can go through and save a PDF or a Word document, an image. Actually, I believe it may only be PDFs and images. I think we actually tried to test it with a Word document and it wouldn't let us upload in that format. But most files you can go through and upload for the documents that you have saved. So the student would go ahead, they would hit that upload option. You can upload multiple images all within the same page. It will ask you, would you like to add pages to this document you're uploading? Or if you've got different files, you can upload multiple files. It doesn't have to be just in one file, if that makes sense. As you can see on the right-hand side here, after the student has uploaded their 2018 tax return, you can click Add Pages if you need to go through and add anything else. But we are nearing the end of the process. So from here, after everything has been uploaded, the student is going to want to make sure they hit the Submit button. But that is not the final step. So there's actually one more step, and this is something we really commonly see students do as well. They will want to then hit the Finish button. If you only hit Submit but not Finish, this information will never be sent to our specialists for review. So make sure you hit Submit and make sure you then hit Finish. You want to look for that congratulations notice in this bottom right-hand corner. It'll say that the financial aid office is reviewing your file. You can always review the documents that you have submitted. And then from there, you can certainly contact our office if you've got any questions about the process. But from this point, our specialists will now go through and review everything. Now, let's say they notice something or they would like you to go through and upload another document, perhaps, just depending on whatever the income situation is. From there, our specialists will be able to communicate with you through the portal. So the student will get an email notification that there is something they need to go through and review or correct. And they should also get an email when this process has been completely finalized as well. All right, so the student has submitted everything, and a question we very commonly get are, what are the potential outcomes? Like, what could happen with this verification process? And what I always tell families, if all of the information on the Fafsa is accurate, if perhaps you didn't use any estimates, or if nothing has changed, if there's been no major changes in the household, for example, then very likely your financial aid will stay the same. But at times we find that there are corrections, there are things that need to be updated, perhaps information that was not listed on the FAFSA accurately from the start. And there could be perhaps an increase in financial aid. I see that happen from time to time. Also, there may be a financial aid decrease, just depending on what other income scenarios we need to consider per federal regulations. This is why we always encourage families to use the IRS data retrieval tool on the FAFSA, in the hopes that we'll successfully link all of your tax information over, because that's one less document you've got to go through and upload if you are selected for verification. It kind of speeds up this process a little bit. So as far as potential outcomes, I don't ever have exact answers for this question because it really does depend student to student. But if you are selected, this is a process very typically that we have to go through before your financial aid can be finalized and applied to your bill. So if you are selected for verification, if you haven't quite started that process, or if you haven't finished it, maybe you're kind of in the middle of uploading, we try to remind students to take care of it as soon as they possibly can when they get notified, because that way it can speed up the aid process, or perhaps allow you more time to plan if there are any changes to your financial aid award. All right, I know that was a lot of information and a lot of just random screenshots that I threw out at everyone. My goal is to try to have you see a high-level overview of what the process looks like, or at least give you some more familiarity with the portal. So yeah, I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has. Casey or Suzanne, we've got any questions that came through?
Yeah, we have a couple of pretty good questions that came through, so thank you for that. If you have any that you haven't had answered yet, please don't hesitate. The first one we have, if we are selected for verification, but our parent absolutely refuses to share or send their tax information, what can we do?
You know, that definitely is a really tricky situation. You know, per federal guidelines, if a student is selected for verification and if they have any kind of federal aid other than an unsubsidized loan, that would be the only situation where we can move forward without verification if a student's selected, if they only were eligible for an unsubsidized loan. In that case, you know, unfortunately, if we're not able to finalize the verification process, we would not be able to go through and allow your aid to be dispersed to your account. There are perhaps a couple other options. You know, I don't know what other options your parent might be willing to consider. If you were not comfortable uploading to the portal, and I can assure you that that portal is very, very secure. There's a lot of encryption that goes into that process and that upload. Per those same federal regulations, we have to have a lot of security surrounding areas where parents and students can upload tax documents. Another option, your parent, I don't know if they'd be willing to consider this, but using the IRS data retrieval tool on the FAFSA, if they use that link, it actually then masks all of their tax information. And it just gets sent directly to us rather than them uploading like a PDF through a portal. But yeah, if that is your specific situation, if you want to kind of talk that out more with us, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to one of our counselors. We can kind of review your award and maybe kind of walk you through what other options you might have.
I just wanted to add one thing to that quickly. Verification does not hold up any merit scholarships or performance-based scholarships. It would just be the need-based aid, such as the federal state aid or any UOP grant.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you for adding that, Casey. Definitely a good point.
We have another question for you, Kaitlyn. So does the student just set this up or wait if they are contacted for verification?
I mean, ideally, I would wait if you've been contacted. I know that the system will send out kind of regular reminders if you have been selected for verification and you haven't taken any action in going through and creating your account. But if you are unsure if you have been selected, definitely reach out to our office. We can go through and check on that for you. Or there is actually a requirements section, a missing requirements section through Inside Pacific. And you can check that section there. If you see one of the requirements listed states verification, then that confirms that you have been selected. But if you go to that missing requirements and you don't see anything there that states verification, then very likely your FAFSA was not selected and you don't need to go through any of these processes.
Okay, does the student set this up or do they have to wait until they're contacted for verification?
I'm not 100% sure on this because I'm trying to recall how the portal works, but if you have not been selected, if you try to go through and like create an account through the pacific.verifymyfafsa portal, either one, it won't let you, or two, it will just tell you there are no tasks you have to complete at this time. So if you always can go through and double check, but we always tell students, hey, don't worry about it if you didn't get that email from our office that you've been selected. Like I said, we can always check on that for you if you want to check on your individual accounts.
You can also view it on your student aid report. When you file your FAFSA and you get the email confirmation from the Department of Education that it has been processed, at the bottom of that email, it will tell you whether or not you've been selected.
Yes, and you can also go back and reference your student aid report at the studentaid.gov website after you log in. So that's another place that you could check as well.
Kaitlyn, next question is a really good one. When you fill out the household, is it for the current year or the year of the FAFSA forms?
So it would be within the academic school year, and the household size form actually has dates. Casey, do you recall the exact time frame? But I think it's from, if it's the 2021 school year.
Yes, it is July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021.
Yes, so all of those people that you can at least predictably say will be in the household for that academic school year, the upcoming school year, those are all the people that you will want to list on that household size form. So yeah, that's a great question.
Okay, let's move on. When I was filling out the form, it didn't have a section for parent taxes for me, and I am a dependent. Is there a reason why that happened?
Very likely, like I said, that portal has a lot of smart logic built into it. And I'm going to venture to say that very likely your parent was able to successfully use the IRS data retrieval tool, and it linked that information in the system and didn't ask you to go through and then upload anything or provide any information. I'm fairly certain that it has the capability to do that. For that student specifically, if you want to double check, our office just to see if everything went through fine, we can definitely check on that for you. But I believe that is one of the ways in which it kind of recognizes the data that's already added onto the FAFSA. Because if you select the option saying that, we're going to use the data retrieval tool, it will then allow you to log in. But if it didn't give you any of that information to start with, I'm thinking that that already pulled through. Casey, do you recall if that is correct? Does that sound familiar to you?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, I was answering a question.
Oh, no, that's okay. The student was saying that it didn't prompt them to add in any parent tax information and the student is dependent, but I'm thinking that the data retrieval tool, the portal kind of linked all of that information together and then wouldn't have prompted the student to add that.
Correct. So it does pull the information from the FAFSA, and if they did the data retrieval, then the Verify My FAFSA portal is not going to ask you to again enter that information.
Yes, exactly. So that's a sign that you probably did something right on that end. It kind of helps speed up the process. So that's probably why it only asked for student information regarding your tax filing status.
Next, Kaitlyn, can you, I know you went over this, but it's important, so I think we need to look at it again. Can the student set up both e-signatures?
Gotcha. I mean, this is something that you as a family will obviously have to work out. You know, the parent legally is the one that has to go through and review everything. So technically they're the one signing it with their own email, but if you need to work with your parent on that to perhaps help them out, that's certainly something that you as a family can definitely decide.
Okay, next question. What is your opinion on a manual dependency override?
Oh, that is a great question. So as financial aid administrators, you know, it is within our purview to look at dependency override situations. Per federal regulations, there are a couple occurrences in which a dependency override may be more common or something that we are able to take into consideration. So with that being said, if it's simply just a case of a parent not wanting to contribute financially or not willing to fill out the FAFSA or contribute, that would unfortunately be a situation that we would not be able to take into account and approve a student being considered independent. Very often, you know, situations where students are facing some kind of abuse or neglect, or if a parent is not able to operate in their capacity as a parent, perhaps maybe due to drug or alcohol abuse, incarceration, those are situations that we can definitely take into account. If that sounds familiar to your individual situation, I would definitely reach out to our office, because we do have an official dependency override process, which involves a statement from the student, and then we do have to collect third-party documentation, typically 2 additional letters from people who can also attest to the circumstances. Like I said, it's got to be a third party. So examples of that would be law enforcement, member of the clergy, perhaps a school official, a medical professional. So somebody else that can kind of attest to what's going on as far as the student's individual situation with their parent. So yeah, that's definitely something that we would love to explore more with you. If you could maybe give our counseling line a call or send us an email, we can kind of walk you through the process from there. We do have a form that you've got to fill out, and then you attach the documentation with that form when you submit it back for our staff to review.
Okay, and we have one more question. Is there a deadline to fill out verification forms?
No hard deadline per se. I mean, you still can go through and complete verification throughout the academic year. However, I would encourage you not to wait that long, because a large majority of your financial aid is going to be held up and not be able to be applied to your August payment if you have not completed verification. I would advise students, if they can finalize everything within the next 2 to 3 weeks here, that's going to give our specialists plenty of time to go through and review everything, reach out to you if there's any additional information that is needed, and then go through and essentially sign off your financial aid file and finalize your award figures. So that way, when our student accounts runs their billing processes, you will be able to see your financial aid as authorized toward your bill. All of your financial aid would still be in a pending status, and your bill is probably going to look a lot higher than what you had planned if you have not finalized verification. So I would say if you can get that done as soon as possible, you know, don't delay on that. But I mean, as long as we're still within the academic year, you can go through and complete it. But we know that students definitely rely on their financial aid. So that would be incentive to go through and try to get it done as soon as you can.
And speaking of bills, when are the bills sent out?
Okay, so the billing process is triggered by registration. If you are not registered for any classes for the upcoming school year, there's nothing that we can bill you for. So very likely you will probably be working with our orientation team in signing up for one of the summer orientations. after you go through and register for those courses during orientation, our student accounts office will then be running those billing processes, and you will get notified that you have a bill. You can log into your CashNet billing portal and go through and see what your charges are for the fall semester. And then from there, one thing I want to say is do also make sure that you add a parent as an authorized user for your billing portal if your parent is going to be involved in this process, because our student accounts team is unable to release any billing information to parents if the student does not add them as an authorized user. And you can head to the student accounts section of the Pacific webpage for more information on that process.
Kaitlyn, our questions from our audience are answered at this point.
All right.
So I'm gonna pose a question to you. So if for students who might be selected for verification in a subsequent year, can they use the same like email and passwords?
Yes, all of those emails and passwords that are initially set up through the Pacific.verifymyFafsa portal, that login should be able to be utilized for a subsequent school year. There's always the forgot username and forgot password that you can use. If at any point you get a notice that you've been locked out of your account, whether the student or the parent, this comes up quite a bit because it's maybe been a year since you've logged into the portal and don't quite remember the credentials that you signed up with. We have the access to go through and unlock your account. So you can always send us an email or give us a call and we can unlock the account. For the parent, we can resend that verify your email link. We have a lot of capabilities on the administrative side to go through and kind of make those updates. So we can always work with you if you're having any kind of trouble with the login process, the e-signature process. And at the end of the day, if nothing is working, I mean, this does happen occasionally, because without us kind of seeing what's going on your end, it can be a little bit difficult to troubleshoot at times. You can always opt out of that e-signature process and then go through and download that form, print it out, sign it, and, snap a picture with your phone, and then, the student can go through and upload it from there.
Okay, is there a number on the screen, the number to contact you directly if we have any questions?
Yeah, definitely. That our line is 209-946-2421. You can always give us a call and we can, pull up your student's account, check the verification portal, kind of see where the student is in the process, and provide any pertinent details at that time.
For investment property, how or where do we go to get the value of the property to put on the form?
Oh, that's definitely a good question. I'm not sure if your house was appraised recently. If it was not, I know there's quite a few websites that will give kind of a current market value. You could definitely look at those averages. Casey, I know you probably see this a bit more frequently than I do. Do you have other suggestions for that process?
Yes, if you haven't had an appraisal recently, there are different sites that you can go to estimate the value. There's Zillow, there's Redfin, but you also want to make sure that you subtract any debt that you have on the property, and then you would only be reporting the difference.
Yes, definitely a key point. If you've got a mortgage or a loan on that investment, yeah, make sure you go through and subtract that out. Certainly, that's a great question. Anything else? Any other questions folks have? I'm trying to think other common scenarios that we see come up with verification. I really think the biggest one is that, sometimes students don't read everything that's being asked of them to go through and submit. And probably the biggest thing we see is that there are multiple people in the household, siblings, parents, but the student only puts themselves and perhaps one parent on the household size form. And in that case, we kind of automatically will go through and reject it and say, hey, do you mind taking a look at this one more time and just confirming that this is right? And then it will give the student the opportunity to add more household members if there are more people based on what the Fafsa says initially. I think that's one of the biggest reasons that we have to go through and kind of reject the form and allow the student to update everything there.
Is there going to be a copy of this recording that they can access?
Yes, absolutely. We will be uploading everything at the go.pacific.edu/FA webinars page. So you can always access the recording there. Full disclaimer, it took me probably a good minute or two to remember to start recording this one. So, but it was before I got into any of the screenshots. I think I was right at the kind of defining what the verification process is. So I do apologize about that. But almost 95% of this was definitely recorded, and we will be uploading it to the site, so you can always go back and reference there.
So this one's a little off subject, but can we pay tuition with credit card?
To my knowledge at this time, on the main Stockton campus, you are not able to use credit cards at this point. I know it's something the university has explored, but not quite available yet. I'm not certain if it will be in the future. There is a way through your CashNet billing portal that you can go through and link a bank account, and you can make e-check payments from there. If you have further questions about your payment options and billing options, I would definitely reach out to our student accounts department. They'll be able to kind of walk you through all of your payment options.
There is a question about getting an extension directly to you to answer any questions about financial aid. And I do just want to put it out there that we do have a counseling staff that's very knowledgeable that can help you with your questions. I know Kaitlyn is very busy with her outreach and doesn't always have the availability one-on-one. She is really great when she does. But we would suggest that you go through our main counseling line first, and we can get you taken care of that way.
Oh, thanks, Casey. I definitely appreciate that. You can always feel free to send me an email. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Maybe we can go through and schedule a phone call if that works, just kind of based on my availability. But yeah, you can always reach me, my first initial K and then my last name Goslinga at pacific.edu. I'm happy to kind of go through and take a look at my calendar and see when we might be able to connect. All right, now we've got a couple more minutes. If there are no other questions, we may end this week a little bit early. I know that this is a very specific topic and not as broad as some of the other topics that we have gone over. Maybe I'll just open it up once to Casey and Suzanne, if there's any other common mistakes they see through the verification process that they might want to bring up, if they can think of those off the top of their heads. So do you guys have anything else that you want to go through and add?
You did mention opting out of the e-signature. I think something that we see often is the student will e-sign and then the parent will do a manual signature, and we can't accept it that way. It has to be both either e-signature or both physical signature.
Yes, definitely. It's definitely a good point.
Okay.
We had another, oh, go ahead, Suzanne.
We have another question that just popped up. Do we get notified if there's a change to the aid, or does it just show up in the student's portal?
Yes, so an email notification will go out. There should be an automated email that says, hey, there's been a change to your award, or I'm trying to remember the exact verbiage that comes out. But yes, you can go through, you should get a notification. And then if you have any trouble going through and just kind of differentiating perhaps, what that change might have been, because it does resend the, initial award letter, you can always contact our counseling staff and we can kind of go through and check the account and, just verify those changes. But if you've got an older award letter, you can always reference the two of those and pull them up.
Okay, another question. After we fill out the financial aid verification, is there a chance my student will receive a grant or other aid from UOP?
So the only instance where that would happen is if you have been selected for verification, and then perhaps if you overestimated income on the Fafsa, for example, and then your actual income is maybe less than what was initially reported. Those are situations where we see increases in aid, but the student does need to be selected for verification before we go through that process. In all other instances, if a student is not selected, we do go through and review all of the income that was initially listed on the Fafsa.
Does the email go to the student's specific email?
So I believe the initial verification notice for our students, I believe it does go both to the student's specific email and their primary email or their personal email address that's on file. But kind of moving forward into the future, almost all correspondence will go directly to the student's specific email. So if they are not checking that now, I certainly would advise them to start checking that really regularly, because as we kind of move forward into starting the school year, there will likely be more offices and student groups and organizations that will be contacting students, and it will likely all go through the Pacific email. So if they have not set that up yet or started checking it regularly, I would definitely advise your student to do so. And also make sure that they are partnering with you as the parent. So I know that parents are definitely concerned with costs, and they're the ones often that are helping with those bills. So make sure that your student is forwarding you any important billing information that it might be something you take care of. Because moving forward, a lot of the details do go directly to the student. And, you know, we certainly know that they get busy and there's a lot of things going on in college students' lives, but it's important that, you know, they partner with the parent as well to make sure that you as the parent are getting all the information you need and any documents you might need to provide, things like that. All right, I think we might have time for one more question or so. So maybe I'll just wait a minute here, see if anything else comes through. If not, I would definitely encourage you to fill out our little survey that should show up here as you go through and exit the webinar. It's really helpful for us, especially because this series is the first time we've done anything like this. So in the future, we're definitely looking to improve and provide you know, as much helpful content as we can. We hope that these have been helpful so far, and we're looking to definitely provide more content or similar content in the future for all of our students and families. So yeah, thank you all again so much for joining us today and taking an hour out of your busy days to learn a little bit more about financial aid. We know how important this process is to the student college experience, so we're just here to try to help as best as we possibly can. All right, I think that might be it for today. Thank you all again for joining us. We really do appreciate it. Have a great rest of your Friday and a fantastic weekend. And hopefully we will see you next week or perhaps the week after for our final 2 webinars. So have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you again.